Happy New Year, everyone. This episode, we're going to be talking and reflecting on the college application process. Now that that's over for me, I think that since, today's December 31st, it's the end of 2020, which has been a wild year. I think it's a perfect time to look back, look at the things that worked well, the hardest parts of the college application process, since it was such an extended activity and something that took up a large part of my life. So yeah.
¿Qué onda? Soy Sebastián y este podcast es Otomi. For all of my non-Spanish native speakers, this is Sebastian and I'm a high school student in the Bay Area. I've got the facts and the opinions. Join me as we discuss topics of society, culture, identity, education, and life.
For me, the common application, the college application process has finally concluded. It was very long. It was a lot of work was put into it, but finally it's done for me. It's something that a lot of people look forward to since they're freshmen. Obviously, honestly, I didn't look towards it really as a freshman or even a sophomore, and I knew a little bit about it as a junior, but it was something that seemed very romanticized and almost glorified, and in a way that made it very intimidating. Going into it, I didn't really know what it was, but I'd say that this summer I was really prepared well by the Hispanic Scholarship Fund. When I was admitted into the Youth Leadership Institute with the Hispanic Scholarship Fund, I think that really prepared me well for this application process. Why? Well, because I didn't really know what I was getting myself into, and neither did my parents. So I feel like this program, it was like a college readiness, college application readiness program and life beyond college readiness program. And it really taught me the skills that I needed to perform well on the college apps. I'm not one who's really able to afford very expensive private counselors. It was not really an option for me. And living in the Silicon Valley, you are surrounded by a large variety of people, and a large number of the kids at my school and the people that I knew all had private counselors that were extremely expensive, like ranging around $300, $400 an hour, $10,000 for like a semester bundle, like just crazy rates. And I never was able to do that. And I'm telling you right now, from what I heard, it does give you an advantage. These people that I know also had individuals who read their essays and reviewed them and gave them advice on those essays. While for me, I had the luck of my father and grandfather occasionally reading over my essays, giving me comments on them, including some teachers. I asked some teachers to read over my essays, and they gave me comments as well. And I was using my resources. Even though I was like, okay, maybe I can't use these college prep resources that other students have, I'm going to do the best that I can with what I have available to me. And for that reason, I asked my teachers for help and recommendations. At our school, I have a guidance counselor, and he helped me. Especially, he wrote a letter of recommendation for me, and he turned in my school report, things like that. So he directly contributed to the common application. In addition, we have a college advisor at our school who is she gives us advice. Her job entails guiding us through this college application process. And yeah, she gave me some good advice. Some of the stuff she recommended for me, I didn't really take the advice just because I didn't think that it really worked well for me. And this year was very different, considering the fact that there was a test optional policy at many of the top schools of the country where you didn't have to submit an SAT score because many people didn't have access to these exams. I didn't have access to the exam, and I'd been studying all summer. The last time I took the test was around last year, November, and I didn't do as well as I would have hoped. So I self-studied and I prepared for March, and that exam just got kicked back all the way to October. So I didn't take my test until October, even though I had signed up for the SAT in March, in May, in June, in August, and in September. I'd signed up for all of those, and they'd all been canceled. So I was devastated, of course, because I studied so much for these exams. But in the end, at our school, they offered one, and I got to take it, and I got a 1530, which is a score that I'm proud of. So that was definitely a big part of the process, teaching myself to self-study and prepare for it on my own, right? This podcast was a project that I started over the summer out of my own passion because this pandemic really hit us all hard, and I wanted to find a way to continue on with my intellectual curiosity and find ways to entertain myself and further my interests in specific fields like anthropology, human civilizations, history. And I thought this podcast would be a great way to do that, to share my studies, because of course, for each episode, I have to do research. Some of the things I know culturally because they've been ingrained in me. But the thing is, those kind of work as seeds. I have to go out and sprout and start looking at the evidence and looking at the historical facts, and using that, I further my knowledge of these cultural things. It's not like I'm born knowing all about the indigenous communities of Latin America and about the different castes of the colonial hierarchy of colonial, Brazil and Spain, all of that. I have to do research for that. And it's something I genuinely enjoy doing. So it is definitely a pleasure to do that. But yeah, back to the whole thing about the involvement of the Hispanic Scholarship Fund. They were really helpful in that. Fidel Vargas, who is the president, the CEO, he attended Harvard College, Harvard University. And he was really an inspiration for me because personally, before this process happened, I didn't really think that it would be feasible for me to get into Harvard. But it's disheartening, and it can impact you when you notice that a lot of the people around you who are trying to get into those good schools don't look like you. There weren't that many Latinos. There weren't that many African Americans in any of my top classes. There were virtually none. I was the only Latino in those classes, and that was concerning because I said, why am I the only one in these classes? Why is this happening? Now, if I were to simply just say, okay, you know what, I don't belong in any of these advanced classes. Clearly, there's no one else who's like me. Then I would be falling into a stereotype, and I didn't want to fall into that. I wanted to be myself and reveal that my identity, my racial and ethnic identity, has nothing to do with my own capabilities. I had to understand that whatever I do with my life isn't defined by what the other people around me are doing, but rather what I take into my own hands and what I find passion in. So that's why I started to hone down on what I enjoy. I love music. I love culture. I love history. I love writing. I love English. I love languages. I love linguistics. I love politics. I love philosophy. And finding more about what I enjoy, which has been a process throughout high school, and it's gotten stronger since my freshman year, progressively stronger. It's something that I wasn't very sure of, even going into my junior year. Senior year, I after several months of quarantine, I was starting to strengthen what I wanted to do and know, because I needed to know my passions in writing my college applications. I really think that that helped, because with the quarantine, I was able to kind of step back and look at everything from a third person perspective and not be as emotionally exhausted by how active I was, because I was in so many clubs and I continue to be in them. However, commuting from club to club, from volunteer work, classes, that takes up a lot of energy. From home now, I can do everything through Zoom, and that takes up so much less time, so much less energy, and everything is a lot more feasible and a lot easier now that I'm just doing it all from home. So again, I haven't yet said this, but I was accepted to Harvard College, which is the undergraduate division of Harvard University. And this was my dream school. I'd always dreamt of going there, and it was something I'm very, very passionate about. I really wanted to go there. I visited very few schools on the East Coast. I never had the opportunity, but one of them was Harvard, and I fell in love with the university. And I'm so grateful, so grateful, thankful to God, thankful to my family for everything they've done, for my friends, emotional support, because this was a long process, and it started my freshman year and evolved into the senior year. But freshman year, I didn't know how it was going to end. In my sophomore year, I didn't know how it was going to end, neither with junior year. And I always wanted to go to a good university so that I could have an education that will propel me into a future where I can really realize change in our society and our communities, and help bring equality, to racial justice, just all of these different things that to me are very important. And I said the avenue to do this is through an education. And my parents have always been strong advocates of a good education. So it was my goal to get into a good school. I always had a dream to do that, and it was always there. I'd say even when I was little, I remember one time I was at the barber shop, and there was another person there who attended Stanford University. And my mom, we were talking with her, and she said, yeah, it takes a lot of work to get into these good schools. And I didn't really know what that was when I was little, because this was when I would say 8 or 9. But now I'm starting to understand. Well, I've already worked a lot to get to this part, but I understand that it did take a lot of work. There were some times where my friends might have wanted us to go out, and honestly, I usually was able to organize my time well enough that I could go to social outings with my friends, because I do strongly advocate mental health. I think my ability to maintain a strong mental health has actually allowed me to do more than if I were to close myself within my home and just do work all day and night. But going to the university was somewhat of a platonic idea. A lot of my friends already had hoodies and sweatshirts from different schools before they got in, before they've been admitted. And they feel almost, my fear with that, when they're wearing this merchandise from a school before they've been accepted, a lot of them develop a sense of entitlement to going to the specific university. They feel a personal connection with it, which is great. But if they don't get into that one good school, because there are many good schools, but if they don't get into that one good school, it can be devastating to them. And then they can question their self-worth. That happens, especially in the area where we live, where it's very competitive, and there's a big culture of what many people refer to as the tiger moms, who are very, very involved in their kids' education. And I'd say that this tends to be more of a cultural thing within Asian families, South Asian, East Asian, and sometimes in Caucasian families. Within this area, often wealthier individuals who have their children in many different programs with many different tutors who are and instructors who are very, very, very expensive, and a lot of people from lower income households can't afford. And that's the thing. I feel like one success to get into one of these colleges is entirely dependent on your own motivation and how much you want to get into a good school. But not only that, but how much you want to change the world and how much you want to bring goodness to the world. Because a lot of these people who have these so-called tiger moms, they don't really know what they want to do with their lives. Rather, they're living the aspirations of their parents by doing whatever their parents want. Their parents might not even ask them. I know people who were put into SAT camps over the summer. Someone did it at UC Davis for a whole month at an SAT camp. That's so much time spent that they could be doing many other things. And I'm not saying, oh, they should just watch Netflix during that whole time where they were at the SAT, because the SAT, from my experiences studying for the SAT, my vocabulary, my ability to critically read a passage quickly and do math very quickly definitely improved. I have no doubt about that. However, I'd say there are more important things than spending an entire month dedicated only to one exam, one standardized test, like doing independent research, surveying people, finding a passion that you have, whether it's music or learning a new language. If SAT is your passion, then yeah, go for it. But if it's not, then yeah, study an hour a day, study 2 hours a day. But I wouldn't say you should study for a whole month where you're spending 5 hours or more every day on the SAT, because that's challenging. And I studied for the SAT over months, and I did 1 hour to 2 hours per day. But it didn't feel like too much, because through that extensive amount of time, I was able to gain the skills gradually. So in all honesty, I do think that there's a culture here in the Bay Area. There definitely is, especially where I live in the peninsula. There's a culture that advocates for academic achievement, and that is great. We have Stanford University right here. But I feel like it's also causing a lot of stress in the lives of many students who don't really want to do this, whose parents are pushing them rather than their own goals. For me, my parents, one of the biggest things I appreciate from them, and I sometimes gave them a hard time about this because I said, Mom, Dad, look, my friends, they get signed up for all these different things, and it's so easy for them. They don't even have to do it. Why can't you be more involved for me? And why can't you sign me up for these programs so that I don't have to be as stressed about it? And they said, why? Well, because you are the one who has to sign yourself up for these things. These are opportunities that you have to look out for. You have to look for that internship. You have to interview for the internship. You have to find the job. And that's what I did. And I'm so grateful that my parents did that, because I know for a fact that that is how my future will be. Having the confidence to go up to someone and say, I would like an internship. Is there a way that I could be interviewed for this? Reaching out to people. That is something that you develop over time. And I'd rather experience those little failures as a high school student than as a college student or an adult who is now in the actual professional field where there are heavy consequences for everything that I do. And that's the thing. We need to learn from our mistakes. And I think high school is a perfect time to do that. But a lot of students fear it. And there's a lot of anxiety on getting into the best university, which if you want to, that is awesome. Go for it. Work hard. That's what I did. I studied a lot. Every day I studied. I sacrificed some of I used to like playing video games, but honestly, I definitely prefer studying my calculus or my psychology than I do playing video games, because I don't get too much out of that. So, but if you want to do something like play the piano, and say you're not amazing at it, because honestly, you could go to a really good school being an amazing artist. But if you're a decent pianist and it's your passion, go for it. I mean, that's how it is. And the college application process that I had was a big part of it was self-discovery and finding out how my activities that I do, many activities, volunteering, mock trial, robotics, these different passions that I have, I needed to see how I could combine them and really look at myself and how they connected to me personally. Some of them I had just joined subconsciously because I really enjoyed them, but I didn't see how it fit into my personal makeup and the person that I am. So now, as I look at it in retrospect, and that was really what this senior year was about. With the common applications, the schools have supplemental essays, they have the personal statement, which is very important. It requires you to look into your passions and say, okay, this passion, this is my passion, and this is how I achieve social justice. That's one of my passions, social justice. I talk about my projects on the Youth Advisory Council or my volunteering in largely Hispanic communities. These are all things that are very important to me, and I enjoy doing them. But I was able to connect the dots, I think, with this common application. And it was something that allowed me to really see what my goals were, what I wanted to do. And it was something I hadn't really considered before. And that's why that's probably one of my favorite things about this process. It's a process of self-discovery. And you're able to define yourself a little bit better with this. Of course, I can't define myself, but you understand your own goals and intentions and what you want to manifest into the future. I personally really think that it's very different in each case, the way they consider your application. You can have great statistics, but not great extracurriculars. And that's going to hurt. You could have great extracurriculars and not very good statistics and still have a good chance. That's the thing. You have to do your best. That's all I can say. The trick to having a better chance at getting into the school of your dreams or a school that you are really passionate about is to try your best, because each case is very different. And each person is considered on an individual basis and on what they can contribute to a specific university. And that's why a lot of good applicants and qualified applicants are turned down by top schools. They may not have presented themselves in the best way, or they were just not a good fit for the school. And that's totally understandable. It really is. So I think people need to start caring more about finding their passions than trying to check out all the boxes, and worry less about comparing themselves to others. Everything that I did had a purpose. I was passionate about it. I was happy about it. That's why I was able to go on and work through these things for such long, extended periods of time, because I enjoyed it. It was part of who I am. And I know what my passions are. I love law. I love the philosophy, and I love politics, but all of these things are going to evolve over time, and it's not definite. By indulging myself in these activities specifically, I'm improving my chances of actually understanding what I have passions for. So that's my biggest thing. Looking back at the college application process, it was great to notice how to better define myself as a person and better define myself as a student. And I believe that my letters of recommendation they all contributed well to the application. Because believe me, there are many different aspects to this application. The statistical aspect, GPA, SAT, ACT. And then you have the more personal one, your interview, your letters of recommendation, your personal statement. And those say a lot about who you are as a person. And I think that's very important. And I've really enjoyed the process, and it's been punishing. It's been it's required many hours of my day. A lot of thinking, a lot of writing, and then more thinking and more writing. But in the end of the day, now it's all over, and I got something out of it. And I definitely see positive in this application process. And the other positive, I got into my dream school. That's the other positive. That I really wouldn't have imagined beforehand, because I saw myself as the opposite of many of my peers. I didn't have tiger parents who were on top of me for everything. I had to be driven by myself because both my parents worked. I had I didn't have any of those tutoring, Kumon, any of that type of stuff after school. I usually used my teachers as resources. I'd stay after school and ask them questions, sit in the library, look at the books, but I never had a personal tutor or instructor. And I was one of the only Latinos in any of my advanced classes. And that was that was kind of it. I kind of felt out of place, almost like an imposter. And that was something I had to get over with time. So to conclude, I just like to say that, yeah, this college application process, I'd say its greatest function, other than helping me get into a university, was its ability to make me reflect on who I am as a person and notice the things that I've done in my life today to help work towards those goals that I have, and those goals that I have which contribute to my personality and who I am and my morale. So I really appreciated this process. It was a very long one, but it was one that came out the best way it possibly could for me. And I really hope that for most of my peers at school, it works out the way they want it to work out. So I'll catch you all next year in 2021. Thank you very much.